You convert $100 into another currency and suddenly you're holding 30,000 units of money. Does that mean you just got 30,000 times richer? Of course not. So here's the question that's been sitting quietly behind every price tag, every airport currency exchange booth, and every billionaire headline from countries you've never lived in. Why is $1 worth more than 1 rupee? Why does €1 buy more than 100 yen? Money feels universal, yet its value is never equal across borders. In this video, we're going to break down exactly why currencies differ in value, what forces control that value, and why some countries rich in currency power while others struggle. By the end, you'll understand the real forces moving behind every price tag, every exchange rate, and every economic headline you see. Short history of money. Long before paper money existed, people traded goods directly. A farmer would exchange wheat for tools, and a herder would trade cattle for cloth. But this system, known as bartering, had a major flaw. It required both people to want what the other had. To solve this, ancient civilizations began using common items like shells, salt, and precious metals as mediums of exchange. Eventually, gold and silver became the standard because they were rare, durable, and universally desired. Governments then began minting coins to standardize trade. Centuries later, paper currency emerged, backed by gold reserves, meaning every note represented a fixed amount of gold sitting in a vault. This system, known as the gold standard, gave currencies a stable, measurable value. But in the 20th century, most countries abandoned the gold standard, moving to what we now call fiat currency. Money that has value simply because a government says it does, and because people trust it. This shift changed everything, because now, a currency's value depends not on gold, but on a country's economy, policies, and global trust. Section 1. Inflation. Inflation is one of the biggest reasons currencies differ in value. Inflation means the general rise in prices over time, which reduces the purchasing power of money. If a government prints too much money without a matching increase in goods and services, each unit of currency becomes worth less. Imagine a country doubles its money supply overnight. Suddenly, there's twice as much money chasing the same amount of goods, so prices rise, and the currency weakens both at home and internationally. Countries with high, uncontrolled inflation often see their currency lose value rapidly compared to more stable economies. This is why currencies from nations with strong inflation control, like the US dollar or euro, tend to hold steadier value over time, while currencies from nations with runaway inflation can collapse in value within months or even days. Section 2. Interest rates. Interest rates set by a country's central bank play a massive role in currency value. When a central bank raises interest rates, it becomes more attractive for investors to hold that currency because they earn a higher return on savings, bonds, and investments. This increases demand for the currency, pushing its value up. On the other hand, if interest rates are low, investors look elsewhere for better returns, decreasing demand and weakening the currency. This is why global investors constantly watch central bank announcements. A single interest rate decision from the US Federal Reserve, for example, can shift currency values worldwide within minutes because money flows toward wherever it can grow fastest. Section 3. Country situation and foreign investment. A country's political and economic stability directly affects how much the world trusts its currency. Investors want to put their money in places where laws are steady, governments are predictable, and economic policies are consistent. When a country experiences political turmoil, war, or instability, foreign investors pull their money out, causing the currency to weaken. Conversely, a stable, growing economy attracts foreign investment, increasing demand for the local currency and strengthening its value. This is why currencies from politically stable nations with strong institutions, like Switzerland or Singapore, tend to remain strong and trusted, while currencies from nations facing conflict or instability often lose value quickly as confidence drops. Section 4. Export and import. Trade balance. The difference between what a country exports and imports is another major factor. When a country exports more than it imports, foreign buyers need to purchase that country's currency to pay for goods. increasing demand and strengthening the currency. But when a country imports more than it exports, it must sell its own currency to buy foreign currency, increasing supply and weakening its value. This is why export-heavy nations like Germany and Japan often maintain strong currencies, while nations that rely heavily on imports may see consistent currency depreciation over time. Trade balance essentially reflects how much the world wants what a country produces, and that demand translates directly into currency strength. Section 5. Fixed value. Not all currencies float freely based on market forces. Some countries choose to fix or peg their currency to another stronger currency, usually the US dollar. This is known as a fixed exchange rate. Under this system, government or central bank commits to maintaining a specific exchange rate, buying or selling its own currency as needed to keep that value steady. Countries do this to create stability, especially if they rely heavily on international trade or want to avoid the unpredictability of floating exchange rates. However, maintaining a fixed rate requires significant foreign currency reserves, and if a country runs out of reserves to defend its peg, it can be forced into a sudden and dramatic devaluation, causing economic shock. Why don't all countries use the same currency? This is a question many people ask, especially given how complicated exchange rates can be. The truth is, currency represents more than just money. It represents a country's economic sovereignty. When a nation controls its own currency, it can set its own interest rates, control its own money supply, and respond independently to economic crises. If every country used the same currency, they would lose the ability to make independent economic decisions suited to their unique situation. We actually have a real-world example of this challenge: the euro. Multiple European countries share the same currency, but they don't all share the same economic conditions. This has caused tension, because a policy that helps one country, like Germany, might hurt another, like Greece, since they can no longer adjust their own currency value to match their specific needs. This is why most nations prefer keeping their own currency, even with the complexity it brings, because it gives them control over their own economic destiny. Should we make our currency as strong as possible? It might seem like having the strongest currency possible would be ideal. But that's not necessarily true. A very strong currency makes imports cheaper, which is great for consumers, but it also makes exports more expensive for foreign buyers, hurting local industries that rely on international sales. Countries that depend heavily on exports, like manufacturing-based economies, often prefer a moderately weaker currency, because it makes their products more competitive on the global market. On the other hand, a currency that's too weak can lead to expensive imports, higher costs for raw materials, and inflation. The real goal for most countries isn't the strongest currency, it's a stable and balanced currency, one that supports both trade competitiveness and purchasing power, without extreme swings in either direction. Currency strength isn't about winning a competition, it's about maintaining balance that supports long-term economic health. So the next time you exchange your money at an airport counter, or see a headline about a currency crashing on the other side of the world, remember this: those numbers aren't random, and they aren't a scoreboard of which country is winning. They're a living reflection of trust, discipline, and the choices a nation makes every single day. Currency is quiet proof of how the world really works. And now, you're one of the few people who actually understand why. If this video helped you finally understand why currencies vary in value across the world, hit subscribe for more videos that break down how money really works. And thanks for watching.